Welcome to Peter and Ruffy's Football Show here on STV. Our main talking points tonight: Anna Senior will step down as Scotland women's head coach, Hearts sign a French midfielder, and Ray McKinnon denies any knowledge of a move by Dundee United for Celtic's Gary Mackay. Stephen, just a few of the topics we'll be discussing in the company of Gordon Smith, and I'm delighted to say veteran and legendary sports broadcaster Archie MacPherson is here with us. And I use the word legendary because even in my young days, Gordon, you would sit in front of the telly and nothing happened until Archie said, "Good evening and welcome, and here is the footy." Is that fair comment?
Even in my young days too.
Absolutely.
Not quite as young now.
Well, listen, I'm just going to show you. Does it get any younger?
Is that during the relief of Mafficking?
Well, just looking at it, does it get any younger than that, Archie? What about that photograph, eh, Gordon? I mean, I'm clearly auditioning for Duran Duran, but that's how I remember.
Why did the woman
Archie
find me irresistible?
It's the jackets. It's as simple as that. That's from a long, long time ago. I thought I had to show you that on the programme. It's an absolute peach, but great to have you with us, Archie.
I've come on since then.
You have indeed. A vast amount of knowledge which we're going to pick on now, with a number of topics. First and foremost, I think, Gordon, I'll get your thoughts on Anna Senior, because 12 years as the Scotland women's head coach. She's going to step down after the European Championships. It's the first time we've been to a major championships, which I think is to her eternal credit. Yeah. And she'll go back to her homeland to manage Finland after the championships.
Yeah, I think you've got to give her a lot of credit. I mean, I was fully supportive at the time I was at the SFA because I felt she was doing a very good job. She was trying to develop women's football in this country, which wasn't easy, because it was far a long way behind the men's football when she came in, but the Scandinavian countries were ahead. It was a good decision to bring her in. It was before I was there, she was already in the job, but she worked really hard in order to improve the game, women's level, and also lift just basically everybody's idea of it as well. It made it more acceptable within the game, and now they get better crowds, and she's achieved by getting Scotland to a major tournament. That shows you what she's done, and I think she now feels that she's left a legacy now for the Scottish game, and she's decided to go home and manage her own country.
Yeah, Archie, I've been in her company on more than a few occasions. I think some people may well have looked at the women's game with disdain, but when she was promoting it, when she was obviously putting teams out in the park, she promoted it with dignity and class and maintained that it would get better.
Well, a woman in that position has to be an ambassadress. And you're right, she was fighting against the tide. I mean, way back, I remember being at a game at Celtic Park in the jungle, the old jungle. And they put on a ladies' game at half-time, just a 5 minutes each half or something like that. Or was it, it was before the game. So they had a 20 minutes each, right. At half-time, the crowd at full-time, the crowd in the jungle started to chant, "Swap your jerseys," a kind of poking fun at them, as it were, almost derisory, which I think a Scottish crowd, not just at Celtic Park, any Scottish crowd would have adopted that attitude. So they had to convince people that it could still be an attractive, competitive game. Now, in my view, it'll never be the same as the men's game, simply because of the differences in physiques, differences in attitude and so on. But that doesn't mean to say it can't be attractive. And we've seen world football really burgeoning now, particularly in the other side of the Atlantic, in the States and so on, where there's a fairer market for them. The soccer mum is one of the institutions in America now. And so boys and girls are playing football from a very early age. So it's good to see that has broadened out and been generally accepted.
Yeah, I think she'll go with our best wishes, and certainly I think, as Stuart Regan, the chief executive, said, that she's got a legacy that she can be proud of. But from the women's game, we'll switch our attention to a number of bits of transfer news. Some of it speculation, some of it concrete. One of them is Hearts have signed a French midfielder, Mallory Martin, on a 3.5-year deal. midfield, 28-year-old French midfielder. They got him from Lillestrøm. So clearly Ian Cathro now just starting to tweak it and bring in the players that he wants to play his way.
Well, that's it. I mean, that's the whole thing about it. He will have different ideas about the type of player he wants in different positions. And this is somebody they've obviously had a bit of check on, because they've obviously had him scouted and seen him play in Lillestrøm. Their season's been finished for a while. So it might be a scenario there where you can get players, some of the Scandinavian, the contracts are up generally in December when their season finishes. They've got different contract legislation. So he's probably a free agent, and if he's a good player, then Hearts will be looking for that. They'll be looking to strengthen. They've lost, like Patterson's out for a while. He was doing a fantastic job for them. So they do want to strengthen, and they're strengthening in key positions.
Yep. I'm going to get your thoughts, guys, on some of the potential transfer moves, because it's always a worrying time for managers trying to hold on to their best players. One of them, Ray McKinnon, clearly will be worried, Archie, with what's happening at Hibs. Here's what he had to say today on the speculation linking Dundee United with maybe a loan move for one of their former players who's now at Celtic, Gary Mackay-Steven.
News to me. We're just looking at different targets and seeing what's available. It's very difficult in this window to get certain players in, but we're certainly looking around right this moment. Unfortunately, there's been no dialogue. I've not spoke to anybody. There's a list of players that I've spoke to the chairman about that would like to try and bring in, and if we got the opportunity, would definitely be interested. But at the moment, there's nothing concrete in any of those. The speculation.
You can understand them wanting to make a move for a player of that calibre, Archie, because I think they have to respond to what Hibs have been doing.
Sure. Well, Celtic don't need him. That's the point. That's the most important, salient point of all. And he's a good player. And he would probably enjoy going back for a spell to get a game of football in a competitive setting, because they know they're up against Hibs, so going very strongly with that 6-point lead. So in a sense, that would be an inspiration, not just for himself, but for his teammates. So it would be a good move, but he's been very cautious about it, of course. A lot more may be going on behind the scenes that we certainly don't know about, but he's a very useful player to have. But going back to generally speaking about getting players, it's difficult in the winter to get the right kind of player. I don't know anything at all about this French player who's come from Norwegian football,
yes.
I think. And you wonder, what kind of player are Hearts actually going to be able to get? Set against, well, are they good enough for Scottish football anyway? I mean, we've got to bear in mind, keep a clear perspective that we'll pick up players that might not be able to do well maybe south of the border, but will do well enough up here, and maybe is in that category.
Yeah. The other point I was going to get your thoughts on with that in mind is Michael O'Halloran. Here's a guy who's, I think he started 18 first team games, Gordon, since his move from St Johnstone. And Tommy Wright has mentioned if there was even a catch chance that he was available, he'd love to get him on loan. I wonder the value of Rangers letting him go.
Well, the fact is they've not been playing him. It's like Archie talking about Mackay-Steven. He's a player there, talented player, not getting played. I think he got signed on the basis I was at the game the night he destroyed Rangers in the game at Ibrox in the cup match. He was absolutely outstanding, pacey player. But when you look at how Rangers play, I don't think he fits in with their style of play, because he likes to run with the ball, whereas Rangers like to pass it, and he's more of a counter-attack player, and that's what St Johnstone used him very well to do, and that's why I'm no doubt that Tommy Wright would want him back there. It just depends on wages. It actually says it's always difficult this time of year, whether you've got the resources to bring a player like that back.
Well, I was going to say to you, it's a conundrum for Michael O'Halloran. It's a Chris Commons scenario as well.
Well, he should go. If there's an opportunity, he should go, because he's not going to hack it at Rangers. I don't think so. Gordon is right. Rangers want to play the ball around and keep possession. All the other teams, apart from obviously Celtic, all the other teams defend well against Rangers and counter-attack. Rangers are the opposite of that now. They want to keep the ball, short passes, semi-moderate passes and so on. With him, he wants the ball played in front of himself and the full-back. And watching him in recent games, that simply doesn't happen.
No, it doesn't fit in that.
In fact, some people are saying to me, "Oh, he's a bad signing." Well, he's a bad signing in the sense he's played in the context of something it doesn't work for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Good news though, at the weekend, Lee Wallace will be back from the hamstring injury, Gordon.
Yeah, that is a big boost for Rangers. I mean, in recent games they've coped quite well without him, but being back in there, they want him in there because he's the captain. He's one of their strong players, one of the most experienced players. So, and it gives them more competition for places, which also helps in order to get better form out of players when you know you've got someone like that available.
Yep, and I think it could be somewhere in the region of maybe 3 weeks before Joe Gardner comes back. Doesn't need major surgery on that dislocated shoulder, so that could be good news for Rangers as well. Coming up in the next part of the programme, we're going to talk about simulation diving. It's at the very core of something that annoys Gordon Smith. We'll get his thoughts and Archie's after the break. Welcome back to Peter and Ruffy's football show. Gordon Smith here with me. Our bookroom guest, I'm delighted to say, is Archie MacPherson. For many a year, many a football fan, Archie, would love to look at a back page and they see them linked, their team linked with a certain player. Sometimes, if you are a fan of some of the bigger clubs, the last thing you want to see is Manchester United are tracking Kieran Tierney, because there's always a price for every player in Scotland.
Well, first of all, do you believe the story? I mean, there's a lot of rumour goes about, and some of the stories are, well, frankly, manufactured to keep interest going. Although I wouldn't be surprised, it's logical of a player like that, a young player, that's the most important aspect of it, Tierney. He is a young player, but looks like a mature player. So in that sense, it's not surprising that a major club like Manchester United would come looking for him. But it does show you, it's another indication, another stress under the idea that Scottish football has changed so much. I mean, we always did have players going south.
Yeah.
I realise that. But now there's conjecture almost from the start of the season who's going to leave next to go south and get the riches in the Premier League down there. So in that sense, I hope Celtic hold on to him, because from as far as I know, they don't need to worry about the budget. They want to develop a team that's good enough, especially a young player who's going to hang around for a long while, for the Champions League football, because Celtic really need Champions League football. I mean, they could go on and win leagues, but at the end of the day, given the reputation and the kind of calibre of their history, they want to do well in Europe. And a player like Tierney is one they want to hold on to.
Yeah, it's a good point you make. You've burst the bubble of many a person who looks at a back page and gets excited about it. But something I look at a headline and think to myself, okay, that's either an agent who's fired that in, or it's it's come somewhere because they need the money and they think they'll punt a player on. You only have to look at Moussa Dembele, Gordon. I think he was 3 weeks in, scored a couple of goals, and they wanted him down south again. But with Tierney, I think the reassuring thing for Celtic fans with this story is quite simply, here's a boy who said, when I was growing up, I only dreamed about playing for Celtic, not playing for anybody down south. So here's a boy who's got a chance to make a name for himself and go at the right age to another club.
He's doing that. He's making a name for himself. He's top class, there's no doubt about it. And I think it's an amazing aspect for Celtic. They've been very fortunate in respect that they let young Robertson go. They freed him as a kid, and look where he is now. He's playing down in England. He's regarded very, very highly, playing for Scotland, and Kieran Tierney came through after that. So maybe they let Robertson go because they saw the future of Tierney at that point, so they thought he's going to be better. But the two of them are top class. But I think there will be eventually, Peter. I think Tierney, if he continues to develop the way he is, he's out injured just now, but the way he's developing, I think the clubs in England will be looking very closely at him.
With all due respect to you, Gordon, I think you're giving them too much respect to see that far ahead in the future. Sometimes the amount of players that we've witnessed over the years have been fantastic at 15, 16 and 17, and then
I know. But what's the difference?
They don't go on.
What's the difference in age between the two of them, though? So what's Andy Robertson? How much older is he?
Maybe a couple of years older than
that's what
tops,
I mean. So they might have been saying, well, this boy's coming through. He's looking better than this other boy, so they let Robertson go. He goes to Queen's Park and then turns his career around. Whereas Tierney was kept on there, and they've seen what's happened with him. So it's not as if they've missed out greatly with Robertson getting out, because Tierney might, if Robertson got in the first team, Tierney might not have got through.
Yeah.
So one way or the other, they're both outstanding players. I think, as I say, I think Tierney will eventually be a target for major English clubs.
We want to hold on to young players.
Yeah.
That's for sure. I mean, a player maturing 26 to 30 in that area there, you don't want to see anybody going, but if they go at that stage, that's fair enough. Scottish football has to develop itself at club level. It's all very well talking about the international team and so on. If we keep interest in Scottish football, a strong, competitive club football, that's why we must keep our young players.
Yeah, well, the strange thing is we're awash with really good left backs. Robertson, Tierney, and of course Lee Wallace. I thought at Wembley was, perfect attitude. Came into the game, played really well as well. Okay, we'll see how that all develops or doesn't as the weeks go ahead. I want to get your thoughts, guys, before we finish this programme on a couple of things that are bubbling along. Something down south, which I think, Gordon, you've been at the forefront of up here in Scotland. The English FA now looking at introducing retrospective bans for diving or pretending to be injured. The diving part of it, I think, is fairly straightforward if you've got 20 cameras at the game.
Yeah.
The pretending to be injured part of it, I still look at that with a certain amount of scepticism, because it's very difficult to determine.
Yeah, to a degree, we weren't interested in doing anything about that. When I brought it in for the Scottish FA, it was mainly to get at situations where players gained an advantage by conning the referee, really, by acting in order to get a player sent off, an opposition player sent off, a penalty kick, or an action which maybe led to a free kick that became a goal. They were the three incidents. Feigning injury, we get a lot of that, but it's you just let go on with that, and you just say that's it's not really gained an advantage from doing that as such.
Yeah.
But I still think it's interesting because we brought it in. We were the first country in the world. I saw recently Australia brought it in, and about a couple of years ago it was, and they were making a big claim about, well, we're the second country in the world to bring this in because Scotland were, and I was quite pleased with that, to think we were the first people to look at it, because cheating has to be dealt with.
Yeah.
I don't understand why people don't think that it's a major aspect of the game.
I'd go further. I'd have television on the spot. I would have television judges. They're having them in every other sport except football. Football is basically a very conservative sport, very loath to change their ways. Why 11 aside? Why not 10 aside? Bigger space and so on. Just an example of why they don't think forwardly like that. I remember, for example, doing a commentary in the Parc des Princes, and it was Sweden against France, a friendly. And the television company at that time I was working with suggested putting television monitors around the pitch. Both nations agreed. FIFA said no. Yeah. So at least they're now changing. Now they've got goal line technology and so on.
So I would have the fourth official's a video.
You'll know yourself from television, Peter. It's the easiest thing in the world to look very quickly.
25 seconds, 25
seconds, and you've got it, and you can make a decision on that. You've got to trust the guy or a couple of guys who are making the decision on that. It happens in rugby. At rugby, they can hold up the game for 5, 6, 7 minutes to decide whether there's been a touchdown or not, or whether there's another infringement. It should happen in sport. People say to me, what would it be like in an Old Firm game? They always go back to the Old Firm where it caused trouble and so on. That's a load of nonsense.
Yeah, I agree with you on it. I mean, full marks to you, Gordon, at the time for getting that through. But I'd go further, and I like the idea of the video ref. I think it's only a matter of time before top flight games get that because of the TV coverage. The one other aspect of it that I really would like to see implemented, and again it would wipe out cheating in a moment, is stop the clock. Stop the clock. As soon as the ball's out of play, stop the clock. That ends everybody's feigning injuries and thinking we'll roll out the three substitutes, the lot, and give people value for money. They're coming to see 90 minutes football half the time. If it's not just putting the ball out or feigning injury.
No, I agree with you. I think I agree with you. That's exactly what they should do. When the ball's out of play, the clock stops, and then you would know exactly that no one bringing in on a substitute and like that, wasting time. I know there's time added on for these things, and the referees have it in their own hands in order how much time to add on. But I don't think they get it right all the time.
Can you imagine bringing that up at FIFA? Stop the clock.
I've been there.
Actually, I agree with you.
Actually, believe it or not, what you said about the TV evidence, using at the time, I proposed that at a FIFA meeting and got blown out. Got blown out completely. Everyone was totally against it because that's just the way they are. Eventually it will come in. But see, at that time,
it's inevitable.
They all said, no, we don't want that. That's going to cause problems. They said the great thing about football is the arguments in the pub after the game. And I thought, no, the great thing
still
would be
get arguments.
The great thing would be having decisions corrected at the point when they happen.
Well, the great thing about this country is we'll argue over the parentage and, of course, where his loyalties lie, the fourth official who's looking at the video references. Anyway, just on that, one other point. Messi is just briefly on this one. Messi, apparently Manchester City are just testing the water with Barcelona, £100 million.
Is this one of these preposterous stories that come up?
You never know.
I'll tell you what they need. They need a defence. They need a centre half. That's what they need, not Messi.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think he's operating on the attitude, Gordon. If they score 4, we'll score 5. If you've got Messi, there's every chance.
He does love him. I mean, I've heard him talking once when he was asked about how do you stop Messi, and he said you can't. So that was what he did say about him, Guardiola. So there's every chance he will have an interest, no doubt about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Just yes or no, is he the greatest ever in your mind?
No.
Can you give me the one name
Maradona.
that is? Maradona. There's an interesting one. Okay. Always great to have Archie on the programme. I'll delve into my photograph box and see if I can find some other crackers of him as well. Maybe omit myself in the next batch of photos, but great to have him on board. Great to have Gordon Smith with us as well. Join us on tomorrow night's programme at 7 o'clock. Motherwell midfielder and captain Keith Lasley will be our special guest. From Archie, Gordon and myself, good night.